Hey guys, today's going to be a very special video. This is going to be the ultimate guide for you to start your career in the games industry. Have you ever dreamed about working with games, but you don't know where to start? You don't know what are the possibilities? Do you want to be an artist, a programmer, a designer, or several other things? There are so many different opportunities and possibilities to you with games. So in this video, I want to talk about all of that and more. If you have other questions that are not covered in this video, then leave a comment below so we can address that further. And yeah, it's gonna be fun, and I hope you guys find this useful. Hey guys, it's Harry. I've been a game designer and producer for the past 10 years. I've worked with games from mobile to PC, and I've seen several teams doing several different things. And I'm here to offer my perspective as a game developer and designer in the games industry, about talking about games, career, technology, and lots of other things. So if you like that kind of content, hit the subscribe button below, hit a like on the video, and yeah, share with your friends, whoever also is interested in the games industry, and let's go. All right, naturally, this is a very important topic for me. I've been in the games industry for 10 years. I've seen a lot, and I was always a gamer myself. I was a gamer since my childhood. I started playing at whatever, 4 years old. I cannot even remember. But I was born with an Atari 2600 that my father owned. And yeah, so in my early infancy, we started playing games and I never stopped. So I grew up with games, always playing and interested in that market, but never thinking about that as a career. So thinking about working with games only occurred to me in my 20s because I didn't know before. It wasn't something very spread out here in my city, in my country. Internet was very different back in the day in the 2000s. And it took me a while to figure out and realize that I could make a career out of games. And then I chose games because I wanted to work with something that was high in creativity. I wanted to be in a very creative medium and career, but also I love technology, I love games. So all of those elements came together for me to realize that, hey, I can actually make a living with this. It was not easy back in the day, and it's still not easy today, but it's so much easier today than 10 or 20 years ago, right? So if you're starting your career, if you are in your teens or early 20s, or if you are, later in your life, but you want to switch from whatever field you are working today to games because you figure out that games are your passion and you want to understand more about this industry, then that's what we're trying to do here. There are several challenges and opportunities, and I want you guys to be prepared for both, because there was this misconception years back, and maybe it's still present today, thinking that working with games is about playing all day. I'm gonna be playing games all day, and that's gonna be fun, and wow, what a job. And that's completely not it. It's a real job. It's a hell of a challenge and a struggle every day. There are pangs that you go through as a game developer. There are several things that you'll be frustrated about or concerned about, and that's a job like any other job you could have. But it's also super exciting working with games and people, and this very creative medium, talking to players, talking to very talented people. I'm a game producer, so I work with talented artists and programmers and designers all over the place, from all over the world many times, and it's so enriching. So I will tell you the day-to-day of a game developer inside of a game studio, how that works, so you can have a better picture, because many times you watch studio tours or interviews with developers, and that's only a fragment of the real deal in this industry and this job. Whatever you're going to do, art, design, programming, marketing, QA, a lot of things that we're going to talk about here. So stick around. All right, so different areas of study. Maybe you are already starting your career with art, with engineering, with design, or whatever. These are the three main things, right? When you want to work with games, usually you think about becoming an artist, a concept artist for characters, a 3D artist for environments or whatever. Or you can think about becoming a game designer. So you will design the systems with games and make them work, make them engaging and fun for players. Or you want to be in engineering. You are already kind of a programmer yourself, maybe starting out your career with programming or later in your career and you want to switch to games. But those are the three main areas you can study. However, there are lots more, and we're gonna list and talk about that here. But we will start with an artist. So we all love the characters that we see on screen. We all love beautiful graphics, either realistic, 3D, top-notch ones, or pixel art, or indie, very stylized, very unique art style. But we all love seeing beautiful things on the screen or animations. When we talk about artists in a game development environment, we're talking about 2D artists, 3D artists, we're talking about animators, and a lot more. Back in my career, I started actually as a 3D artist. So I love the kind of pipeline, working, modeling the characters and texturing and doing all of that. It was so cool, and it still is. But you have several different perspectives and ways of becoming an artist in the games industry. So the first thing you need to do is start studying a lot your specific area, maybe doing a course in general art, maybe a college degree in general art, so you can figure out what parts of the art world you most enjoy, right? Drawing, painting, modeling, or animating characters, or doing other things, rendering scenes. There's a lot going on there. You can be a technical artist working inside the engine, lighting the scenes, and working on visual effects, all those kind of things. So it's important that when studying an area inside game development, you understand it from a high level perspective. So you know what possibilities and struggles you will face, most likely, in the games industry and many times outside. If you're an artist, you can work for several different companies, even outside of games. You can work for comic books, you can work for the film industry, for games, for advertising. There are so many possibilities, and you want to understand everything so you know the path forward for your career. So artwork inside the game development environment can mean a lot of things. Early on, almost all games will need concept art to define how the characters look like, how the environments and scenes and composition will look like, the general art style that will guide the entire development and the graphics, from modeling, from texturing, animating, facial expressions. A lot of that will happen in the art department of a game production. And let's say you want to be a programmer, right? Let's say that you already have a technology degree, a computer science degree, or it's in progress, or you are simply interested. Basically, engineering and programming the game is about making the functionality work, making all the work inside the game engine. And today, the most common engines are Unity and Unreal and Godot, but you can have several others. And bigger companies will have proprietary engines of their own. They built their own engine back in the day, and that's the engine that they use, right, for their games. So it's important that you know a lot of the most common programming languages in the industry. I'd say C++, C#, or Java, or a lot of things that are used with games, especially for those game engines, but that's also a lot of other functionalities that you can create in plugins or whatever. Those are mostly C++ in the industry, I'd say. And yeah, while for an artist, a university degree is not required, the most important thing is definitely your portfolio, your pieces, your characters, your environments that you have created to show the companies. For a programmer, I'd say a university degree for computer science or something like that, it is pretty much required, right? I've seen tons of different position offerings in the industry from several companies, and most of them require some kind of university degree. And I'd say, you might have this question, do I need to go to college to work with games or not? For a lot of areas, if you're a designer, if you're an artist, if you are several different things, maybe it's not super required, but I'd say it's still very advantageous for you to have some kind of degree, because I've seen, especially bigger companies, they a lot of times, most of the times, in my experience, they require some kind of university degree. So if you can go to college, if you already have a diploma, then use it to your benefit because it's going to be good. It's going to be good for your career in games. So yeah, the engineering team, the programming team, it's the backbone of the game development. They are doing all the functionality. They are programming characters, programming events and scenes and the engine itself, expanding on the engine. You can be working on several different tools for the development team. So facilitating the work of the development team while they are working with, the assets for a game. You can be facilitating the rigging process, the process of coming up with the skeleton of a character that's going to be animated afterwards. You can be doing so many things. That is such a rich field of study for someone interested in game development. You can be working with the rendering engine, in the graphics and trying to advance and do things differently for a particular art style or for the biggest realism that you can get. You can be doing so many different things as an engineer in a game production. In a game designer, I've seen over the years people having this misconception about what game design actually is and what is the role of a game designer inside a production. Game designer is the person who creates the systems. So games are composed of rules and systems, right? That's basically in a nutshell what a game is or how the game can function inside the boundaries of the game. And the game designer is responsible for creating those rules, understanding the mechanics and dynamics of the game, defining what those dynamics are, and polishing and tuning those rules, those mechanics, the balance aspect of a game. So a game can function, but it still not be fun or engaging or exciting to play. And that all comes down to game design approaches, techniques, and different perspectives that you can take, right? So two game designers working on the same concept and briefing for a game, the same idea, the same prototype, they can come up with two completely different experiences depending on what they choose to do with that game, with those mechanics and how you interact with them and the controls. All of that is part of the study for game design. However, naturally, game design is a very holistic position in a team. So you will always be thinking about and you will always be communicating with your artists, your programmers, your sound designers. You as a game designer have to be an all-encompassing person for the team because you have to understand and you are planning on what the game should be and how the game will play out and what is the experience for the players and the end result for a game, right? That is all the responsibility of a game designer. So back in the days, it was very common for a game designer to be working more on the documentation part of the game, writing the game design document that used to be 100 pages long and, leading and defining and refining and polishing and balancing all of those aspects of the game. But nowadays, game design is a much more hands-on approach. Usually, game designers will understand and be proficient working inside the engine because I'd say that one of the top priorities of a game designer, especially early on in the production, is prototyping and understanding their own prototype. So you as a game designer, you kind of need to know how to prototype your own games, your own ideas, how to change that quickly, how to experiment with different settings and attributes for your characters and mechanics. All of that, making the game work in a rapid way is a lot what a game designer is trying to do early on in the process. Later on, you're going to be organizing the team. You're going to be documenting a lot of stuff. That's true. That needs to be done as well. But you are always concerned with refining the mechanics and dynamics inside a game, right? And you can have several different things. If your team is small enough, then they probably have just the game designer role. But if your team is bigger, you're working for a bigger company, they can have an interface designer, they can have a systems designer, a combat designer, dialogue designer, all of those things, depending on what the game needs. So there are no fixed standards in the industry, and it all depends on what you're doing, what the team needs, and what the game needs. All right, if you take the game team and only consider the bare bones of it, you are probably going to have one artist, one programmer, and one designer. That is the triangle, that is the perfect triad of game development, right? At least the most necessary one. All of the other ones are incredibly crucial for a good production, but at the bare bones of your game, there is always an artist, unless you are working on a text game, that could be a thing, and you don't need art per se. You always need a programmer, someone to code the game and the mechanics and functionalities of the game. And you're always going to have a game designer or someone acting as a game designer working on the systems, the mechanics, refining things, unless you want to release a very crappy game, right? Okay, but there's a lot more than that. A lot more than those three roles. Maybe you don't fit in. Maybe you don't find yourself to be an artist or a programmer or a game designer, but you still want to work with games. There are lots of different things. One of the things is QA, quality assurance. I'd say that QA is one of the easiest ways for you to get into the games industry. A lot of big companies are always hiring QA testers and specialists because QA will test the game extensively. They will play the game, they will report back issues and bugs and functionalities that are not working as intended and edge case scenarios. So there's a lot going on, and it's extremely important for almost all facets of your game production, having a quality assurance team and personnel working competently in that department. And the QA tester is one of the reasons why people had this misconception about, oh, I'm going to be playing games all day. I'm going to be playing the game over and over, and that's going to be super fun. But bear in mind that a QA tester, and by the way, basically all of the development team, they are always playing the game, but usually in a very rough state, usually playing the same parts over and over, not for the fun and engaging aspect of the game, but to identify problems, but to understand, the sequencing of when you go from the main menu to the tutorial to the main game, first level or whatever. So it's a system. We are systematizing the game, breaking it down in several different aspects and areas and, different systems so we can analyze separately and together. So there's a lot of work to be done there. And that's the work of a QA tester. If you don't have a specific skill in the games industry, art or design or coding, you can usually go through that route and figure it out later. So you can, from a QA tester, you can become a game designer, you can become a producer. I'm going to talk about that. You can become an artist. Depends on what your expertise lies. Okay? So keep that in mind. All right, game producer. That's another role that you can take in a game team. I'm a game producer. And what does that mean? Game producer really doesn't have much of a standard in the industry yet. Some companies call them project managers or program managers or producers or many times several other names. But I think the idea is the same. A producer is a facilitator and a manager of the team or part of a team, right? So in my perspective as a game producer, a producer is responsible for the production, not the development of the assets, but the production techniques and strategies and ways of working. So it's so common for people to think, and I talked about that, right? The bare bones of a team, a game designer, an artist, and a programmer, right? There you have a game. Yes, you will have a game, but for a professional game development and release, you need to have the correct strategies and efficient strategies for your team to work with, right? And you need to be thinking about the high level perspective and the different interactions with the team. Why am I talking about that? Because an artist, they want to be making art. They want to be painting characters or modeling environments, all of that. Creating beautiful lighting for your scene, all of that. Programmers, they want to be coding. They want to be programming functionalities and debugging your code and making stuff work. Game designers want to be creating systems and polishing, iterating on them, creating prototypes, all of that. A game producer will think about how all those people can work together efficiently to deliver the best game that we can deliver. So that involves managing the project, managing the tasks, priorities. My day-to-day as a game producer, I'm always thinking about the priorities. What should the team create next? What is the next big important thing for the game? Because games are very expensive to make. Just like films, games are very expensive to make. And there are tons of different things that you can be doing. New characters, new mechanics, new levels, new systems, crafting or whatever. And what should you focus on? That sounds like an easy thing to answer, but it's really not. On a day-to-day, priorities change all the time. You find new technologies, new problems to resolve, and people come and go, new people join the team, old people leave the team, and that's always very dynamic. And a producer, a good producer, should have the strategies in hand to deal with all of that. So the artist can focus on making art, the programmer can focus on coding, the game designer can focus on the game design, and all of those things. So the producer is the overall strategist for the team. That's how I would put it. Okay, so for being a producer, you can have several different backgrounds. You don't necessarily need to be an artist or programmer or designer previously in order to become a producer in a game environment, right? But the more you know about the different dynamics of a game team and its different areas of study, the better. So I'm a designer. I have a background in 3D art. I have run my own indie company. So back in the day, I was coding a little bit of my own games. I am by no means a programmer, a professional programmer, but I have coded my own games. I have made the UI, the user interface for the games. So I understand a lot what's going on in the game production in a very holistic way. So I think it benefits the game producer quite a lot to have these different perspectives of a team. And once again, depending on if your team is small or very specialized, you can be working as an art producer, as a systems producer, as a server producer or sound producer or different kinds of production, right? Because you have several different deliverables inside a game team and you need producers to be overseeing and making strategies for all of these different areas and stuff to deliver. Okay, so we have covered the artist, the programmer, the designer, the QA tester, and the producer. There are several other roles as well. You can be a writer, writing for games, for the narrative and story and dialogues and whatever. I have worked with different artists for various projects that I have participated in. You can be a sound designer. You can make music and sound effects for games, and you can specialize on that. But bear in mind that the most common approach for a game team to hire sound designers and artists are usually freelancers. So it's depending on the team. If it's a big team working on mostly narrative games like Naughty Dog or Rockstar, they certainly have their in-house writers and sound designers and the whole team, right? We're talking about AAA companies here. But for smaller or mid-sized companies, it's very common that they work with freelance artists, freelance designers, and freelance writers, and other roles as well. So there's a good chance, depending on your role, depending on the area that you want to specialize in, that you will, at least for a part of your career, be working as a freelancer for the companies. So freelancers are a much more flexible approach, but it's not in-house, so there are different trade-offs. A lot of friends of mine, colleagues of mine, they are freelancers for game companies and they love it. Other ones, not so much. So it really depends on your goals for your career and what you want to do. But bear in mind that this might be a very common way of working if you are working in these specific areas. All right, one area that's becoming more and more important and common in a game team is the data analyst. We have free-to-play games flooding the market right now. Most of the games that we have today are probably free-to-play on mobile, PC, or console, whatever. And when you're releasing free-to-play games, you are very concerned with the data, right? With the feedback from players and the KPIs and the measurement of your numbers and success. You're very concerned about the numbers. And a data analyst is a professional that's going to oversee the reception of that data, the feedback from players, not only what players are saying, but how they are interacting with your game. How many players your game has right now, how many players are churning or leaving the game, where are the players spending money inside your game, how much are they spending. So you want to collect all of that data because that will become feedback and new priorities for the game team for new features and systems. So that is a relatively new role for many companies. A lot of companies don't have data analysts in-house, but when you're talking about mid and big free-to-play companies, and even not free-to-play companies like Blizzard and EA, they have like entire data centers for that with dozens or probably hundreds of data analysts and people that are concerned with gathering that data, preparing the feedback and reports so you can know where to focus on for your game, like new features, new developments, and stuff that will happen in your game. That may not sound as exciting or stylish as the other things like art and programming and stuff, but it really is an integral part of modern game development. So if you have your own team and studio, you should really think about having your data department. And if you're thinking about, if you have this analytical mind, maybe you are a mathematician, maybe you are something like that, or you just enjoy that part of the work, but you are also very interested in games, maybe the data analyst role might be good for you. And yeah, the last role that I want to tackle here is the game director. Many times we hear about game directors, but what does exactly that mean? Like Hideo Kojima from Kojima Productions or Shigeru Miyamoto from Nintendo, the legendary designer and director from Nintendo. What exactly does a game director mean? What do you do as a game director? Once again, like the game producer, there are no fixed standards for the industry. Some teams will have game directors for the game, some won't. Part of the teams will have more than one director. We have like a committee of directors deciding on the stuff in the game. Basically, a game director, like a film director, is deciding on the high-level vision for the game and the big priorities. If you have one director with a very strong vision for the game, usually like Kojima or like Shigeru Miyamoto or others, then these people will decide on the big things about the game, be it narrative, the experience, the mechanics, how the game plays out, right? Those things are going to be the decision of the game director. And you don't have, once again, to have a specific background. You may be a designer and become lead designer and then become game director. Game director is a very project-dependent role. It's not a role that you have in the company per se. You're going to be the director of that game. You may be a programmer or a technical person and become the director of a specific game. You can be an artist, the art director, and then become the game director for the game. That really depends. There's no one path leading to the game direction, and there's not even a standard to what that means in the industry. I particularly love the idea of game direction for games because I think unique games, strong, powerful, impactful games, they need this high-level vision and a guardian for the game's vision and somebody that can communicate priorities and the vision clearly to the team. And that person, to me, would be the game director, many times called the creative director as well. So that, once again, really depends. All right, so as you have seen, there are various different roles that you can take in a game production. and it really needs to fit your personality and your style of working. If you are more of a creative person, if you are more a technical person, maybe you are a business centered person, that will guide you through the correct or the most ideal career path for you. You have to think about all of those elements, that those different opportunities and challenges. Maybe if you're not a creative person, and if you don't want to be, if you don't want to strengthen and evolve that creativity inside you, you probably would not think of becoming an artist, a game designer, or some other roles that involve a lot of creativity. Maybe you are more of a technical, analytical person, business centered person. There are other roles for you to fulfill. And let me tell you, they are very exciting as well. They can be very exciting as well. It's not like you're going to join all game companies and it's going to be amazing. A lot of game companies are boring to work in, unfortunately. People don't have, there are no written standards of how you can conduct a game company. So you join game teams that will be super exciting with a lot of talented and like-minded folks, but other companies will not be that way. So try and not get discouraged if you get your first job or second job in the games industry and it's not your dream job, right? You thought it would be this amazing experience full of fun and engaging people, but it's a job. You have to keep that in mind. But your career is about developing over and over your own skills, your own network, connections with other people from the industry. That's very, very important. So talk to people, go to events, do all of those kind of things if you want to evolve. And over time, you will understand what you want for your own career, how you want to work best, and you'll find the best opportunities for you. Okay? So don't get discouraged if the first or second opportunities in the games industry are not exactly how you imagined. Okay, last thing that I want to tackle in this video is if you should become a generalist or a specialist. What does that mean? For different roles and different teams, you generally see people that are specialists or generalists. Generalists are the jack of all trades. If you're a generalist artist, you can work in several different styles. You can maybe even work in 2D and 3D at the same time. You can do a little bit of everything. This is more required in smaller companies. Smaller companies with less people, they don't have the resources to hire each specialist in separate, right? So they require professionals to work in a more holistic way. You can do a little bit of everything. If you are a producer, you can be managing the art team, the technical team, the marketing team. There are several different teams. You can have base strategies and base skills for every different role, but you will be a jack of all trades. You'll be working in a bit of everything. While specialists, they obviously specialize in one specific thing. So maybe you only do characters as an artist. You only do environment. You are a lighting artist. You go into the engine and work with the lighting environment and scenes and effects, visual effects for the game. If you are a programmer, maybe you are specialist in a specific engine, in Unreal, in Unity, or you are specialist in one single programming language like C# or C++. So you specialize and become very good at doing that. When you do that, you have less opportunities because you only know C++ or you only know how to make environments. You are not going to be hired to do other things. However, more and more, you will be required across your career as you evolve over the years to become more of a specialist. I think that is the natural trend. So if you're starting your career, naturally, become a generalist. Understand a little bit of everything. You can work in smaller projects, smaller productions, or maybe you are lucky, you live nearby a big studio, you live in the US and you have like EA at your door, or Blizzard or whatever, and they are hiring QA testers or more specialist roles, and you can take on that. So if you're starting out your career, try to become a generalist first, so you even understand what you want to do, what you are good at, and then you can specialize in specific areas of your interest or the opportunities that you find, right? Many times your intention was to be a generalist for a couple more years, but then you join a team and you have the specific role and you end up specializing in that skill or area. That can also happen, right? But it's important that you think a little bit ahead if you want to specialize in one or two or three different areas and what opportunities will match to those skills, because your job hunt will depend a lot on your skills and your specializations. Okay, that was it. Those were the tips that I had for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed the information here, the content. If you did, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video. That helps me a lot understanding what you guys want to see or not. Many times I talk about games that are out there that we play from my game development perspective. But today I want to bring more to you guys this perspective of joining the games industry. Many of you might be gamers, you love playing games, but you never thought of that as a career, but inherently, like intrinsically, you always wanted to, right? Maybe you will find out in the process. And yeah, games are a very exciting industry. There's a lot going on, a lot of innovation, new technologies, new games, billions of players, but it's also a job. So you need to be aware of that, because many times it's not going to feel like the dream job, the best thing in the world. It's going to feel like a boring job, or you're just doing your thing and doing your tasks over and over. That really depends on the team that you are joining. So keep that in mind. And again, don't get discouraged if you don't find your perfect position early on. That requires a lot of development, a lot of experience and years in your career. All right, that was it. Thank you very much for watching. If you have more questions, leave a comment below so I can address them. I'll try to respond to all of your questions below. And yeah, catch you guys next time.